Hello, and welcome back to our series on the history of fashion in Australia. I'm Amelia.
And I'm Sam. Last episode, we covered how Australia looked from 1930 to 1970, and now it's time to see how we got from there to here.
So grab onto your hats as we take another trip in our very exciting time machine. Whoa!
So now we're back in 1970. Everything is looking really groovy. Amelia, why don't you tell us a little bit about what looks were happening here in Australia in the 1970s?
No problem, I'm so glad you asked. The early 1970s fashion scene was very similar to 1969, just a bit more flamboyant. It wouldn't be hyperbole to say that a fashion revolution occurred in the 1970s.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty big stuff. Polyester was the material of choice and bright colours were in. Men and women alike were wearing very tight-fitting pants and platform shoes. By 1973, most women were wearing high-cut boots and low-cut pants.
Nice.
Early 1970s fashion was a fun era. It culminated some of the best elements of the 60s and perfected and/or exaggerated them. Some of the best clothing produced in the 1970s perfectly blended with the mods of the hippies.
Ooh.
That nice relaxed culture. And just when it seemed pants couldn't flare anymore, the flare was almost gone.
Oh no.
Yeah. By the late 1970s, the pantsuit, leisure suit, and tracksuit was what the average person was sporting. Every woman had a cowl-neck sweater in her closet, and every man had a few striped V-neck velour shirts.
Cool.
Very nice.
Tunics, culottes, and robes are also very popular. And sometimes it was actually hard to tell which dresses were meant to be worn at home and which ones were for a night out on the town. So you could wear your slip to bed and or out.
Versatile.
There's one common theme throughout the fashion in the 1970s. Pants were tight-fitting. And it's probably the first full decade in which women could be seen wearing pants in every walk of life.
Nice.
It's also hard to miss the fact that colour almost completely disappeared by 1979. Earth tones, greys, whites, blacks, were in full force as people had apparently tired of the super bright tones of the early 1970s.
They're so colourful.
I know. Like the decades before it, fashion in the 1970s changed drastically from the beginning to the end.
However, styles from 1971 are certainly more similar to styles in 1969 than 1979 for sure. If you want to think about it in terms of decades, you could say the early 70s were very late 60s and the late 70s were very early 80s. Bit of maths for you there. In the beginning of the decade, women's styles were very flamboyant. Extreme bright colours were in high demand and long, flowing skirts and pants were everywhere in the winter. In the summer, women wore very short shorts and skin-tight t-shirts. Oh, and you can't forget about the roller skates.
No.
Cannot forget
Iconic.
about them. Exactly. With every year, pants were flaring wider and wider. Soon, the flare exploded into bell-bottoms, and it couldn't go anywhere but smaller from there.
Imagine we're still wearing bell-bottoms today, although some people do.
Yeah, exactly.
Another trend that was emerging and soon took over the fashion world, suits. Some women were wearing pants in the 60s, but not many of them. By the time the 70s rolled around, women were wearing pants in every walk of life. Female executives were wearing business suits with pants, and women at home were wearing jeans.
Comfy.
Women's fashion in the mid to late 1970s was dominated by suits. Leisure suits, pantsuits, jumpsuits, and tracksuits, also known as warm-up suits, were worn all over Australia. That's not to say that dresses, blouses, skirts, and other popular garments weren't worn, it's just that they weren't as important in defining the style of the times.
Kind of like athleisure today, you know?
Exactly, athleisure wear is happening.
It is in.
Hats were not popular for everyday women. Jewelry was nice, but no longer important, and hair was long and natural. Oftentimes, women could do their hair in just a few minutes versus hours. Above all, women could finally wear whatever they wanted. Sure, gender roles still played a part in wardrobe choices, but compared to previous generations, women's fashion in the 1970s was nothing short of revolutionary.
Great, finally.
Yes, we're there.
The fashion breakthroughs that began for men in the late 1960s continued into the late 1970s. For years, men's fashion changed very little. Hairstyles changed more than clothes, and most differences you find are subtle. Starting in the mid-60s, men's pants became more slim-fitting. This was a huge departure from previous years. The changes kept on coming, and by 1972, it was normal to see a man in low-rise bell-bottoms and platform shoes. Wow, insane. This outfit would have been hardly laughed at just 10 years before. Men's clothing got tighter and tighter. A large portion of the clothes from this era were made of polyester, or a blend of cotton and polyester. Later in the decade, velour and terry cloth became a very popular choice of fabric for men's shirts. Who would have known?
Velour, very fancy.
Yeah.
Very glam. For an Aussie businessman, two very different types of suits were loved by men in the 1970s. First, there was the leisure suit, which was introduced around 1972. It exploded in popularity after John Travolta's smash hit Saturday Night Fever.
I love that disco film.
This one?
Yeah.
The other suit was the tracksuit. Although the tracksuit is more often associated with the 80s, they were quite popular in the late 70s. In fact, sportswear in general was worn almost everywhere.
Kind of like now, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Talk about timeless fashion.
Yep. Can't go wrong with a good sportswear outfit. Men weren't wearing hats anymore. Their hair was much longer and they didn't always tuck their shirts in. And facial hair was great, but if you didn't have chest hair, then you better get yourself a really big gold medallion to cover up your bare chest.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Collars were wide and the pants were tight. And that's men's fashion in the 70s, baby.
There were some real trends back in the 70s that defined the decade. Coming off of the 1960s, an era of boy bands, short skirts and psychedelia, the 1970s gave both men and women a new freedom to dress. This decade is not known for one particular style, but for the combination of a variety of trends and cultures differing from the social conformity of the 1940s and 50s.
Finally getting some freedom.
Yes. The 1970s also introduced the concept of comfort over style. Mixing and matching was introduced, with the layering of vests, skirts, and shirts becoming a style staple. In the 1970s, Vogue declared, "There are no rules in the fashion game now. You're playing it, and you make up the game as you go." I like that.
I love that.
There were a lot of trends that went in and out of Australia's look. The first is psychedelia. At the beginning of the era, the psychedelic trend was still present. Designers such as Yves Saint Laurent and Pierre Cardin were filling their runways with velvets, chiffons, and prints. Menswear was limited to bell-bottom jeans, tie-dye shirts, flannels, and corduroy pants. Exotic jewelry became a must-have in a woman's wardrobe, along with headbands, hats, flowing scarves, and foreign headpieces. Homemade bracelets and headbands made from materials such as wood, hemp, flowers, and Indian beads were considered an essential part of a unisex wardrobe.
Made from hemp.
Yeah,
Wow.
delicious.
The next trend was Western. Throughout the 1970s, an estimated 30 major Western films were released every year. Yep, featuring big names like John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, and Sam Elliott. These popular pictures had a huge impact on fashion, particularly men's. Flannels, corduroy, cowboy boots, and shelling were crucial elements of the Western wardrobe.
How hot.
Yep. As you remember from our last episode, this was also a look in the 60s. Another
Style was French. In 1968, actress Jane Birkin travelled to France to shoot a movie. She not only formed an iconic relationship with Serge Gainsbourg, but also led a fashion revolution and what is now known as French girl style. European singers Sylvie Vartan and Francois Hardy, as well as model Lulu de la Falaise, helped define the boho classic style, with bell-bottom jeans, white peasant dresses, and black velvet suits, a trend then backed by Yves Saint Laurent and Karl Lagerfeld.
Then it's officially popular.
Yeah.
It's backed by them. Another popular trend from the 70s was Bohemian. Fleetwood Mac was a staple band of the 1970s. Frontwoman Stevie Nicks created a witchy boho aesthetic that remains part of pop culture. Unlike the 1970s trends, this one didn't start in a Paris atelier or the streets of psychedelic San Francisco. Throughout her career, Stevie worked with independent Los Angeles designer Margie Kent, who created the signature leather and lace look.
Ooh, iconic.
Yep.
Disco was also popular. When Studio 54 opened in 1977, it became the celebrity hangout. As a result, consumers were introduced to a new style of clothing full of sequins and vivid colour. Designers such as Diane von Furstenberg, Gucci, Halston, and Fiorucci were endlessly inspired by the lavish parties, music, and dancing. Men began wearing brighter colours and tighter suits, while the women embraced sequin bell-bottoms and Donna Summered the night away.
Sounds like a good time.
Very fashionable.
Finally, camp was a popular aesthetic. If you thought 2019 was obsessed with Queen, you should have seen 1979. Freddie Mercury's eccentric style, as well as Elton John's costumes and David Bowie's lightning bolt, created a new definition of camp. This trend invited members of the LGBTQ+ community to begin expressing themselves proudly and lead to smaller minority designers bringing their avant-garde styles to the forefront.
Nice. Now let's look at the 1980s. From the theatrical flourishes of Vivienne Westwood to Catherine Hamnett's slogan t-shirts, from Madonna's underwear to Margaret Thatcher's power suits, the 80s saw as many fashion styles and statements as there were parties and protest marches where you could wear them. The early 1980s were very different from the rest of the decade, with parts of the late 1970s carrying over. The early 1980s saw a minimalist approach to fashion, with accessories less of importance and practicality was considered just as much as appearance.
This jacket's not very practical. Looks good, but it's quite heavy.
Yeah. Clothing colours were subdued, banning basic colours such as varying shades of brown, tan, and orange, directly contrasting with the bright fluorescent colours that appeared in the 1970s. The fitness craze of the 70s continued into the early 1980s. Everyday women's streetwear worn in the 1980s included ripped sweatshirts, leotards, sweatpants, tights, and tracksuits.
The era of the leotard.
Don't miss it.
In the 1970s, more women were joining the workforce, and by the early 1980s, working women were no longer considered an anomaly. Yep. As a way to announce themselves as equals in the job market, women started to dress more seriously at work. Popular clothes for women in the job market include knee-length skirts, slacks, a matching blazer, and a different coloured blouse.
Very professional.
Yes. Women's fashion in the mid-1980s became more colourful, approximately around 1985. And this includes long wool coats, long flared skirts, tapered pants, designer jeans, spandex cycling shorts. They're in right now.
They so well.
Yeah. Long and bulky sweaters, jumpsuits, and leather trench coats, fur coats, extremely large scarves, beanies, leather gloves, and dresses worn with wide or thin belts, all with bright, colourful patterns.
Of course, can't forget them.
Yeah. After 1987, the short skirt was the only length supported by fashion designers. Although skirts of any length were acceptable to wear in the years before, almost all of the attention was given to the short skirt, especially among young women and teenage girls. And shoulder pads became smaller and smaller close to the 90s.
Oh, poor shoulder pads.
Yep.
For the men, there were a lot of good, funny trends that highlighted their look for the decade. The mullet. The mullet never left, really.
No, it did not.
It's making a comeback, all
Certain
right?
parts of Australia.
When you're talking about men's fashion from the 80s, there's only one place to start with that glorious hairstyle at the time, the mullet. Save for men, particularly footy players, it was the look of the moment. Heck, some guys even went the extra mile and had it permed.
Oh, wow.
That is definitely a look.
Yeah.
Baggy jumpers. Yes, there was neon, bare chests, and gigantic hair, but the 80s had its fair share of let's look as bland as possible too. No more so than in the slightly baggy and usually grey or beige jumper that naturally tucked under at the waist. Pushed up sleeves, optional.
Very cool. Bomber jackets were a look. There were two different types of bomber jackets that sum up the 80s fashion for men. Most commonly was the usually green Air Force bomber that also came in black, blue, and a shimmery maroon. That was a thing back then, the maroon colour.
Yeah.
But there was also the preppier version that looked like the love child of the bomber and a leather aviator jacket.
Ooh, classy.
Think Tom Cruise in, well, pretty much any movie in the 80s and you'll know what I'm talking about. New romantic. The 80s, God love it, was the era of the new romantic. You can translate that to mean, let's clobber together a mix mash of silky suit jackets with rolled up sleeves, lots of shimmery material, the occasional sports headband, and as much hairspray as possible.
Boy, did it work though.
Yes, it did. Adds a sultry look, pirate t-shirt, a swipe of your sister's lip gloss, and voila, you're ready for action.
I think you just described Harry Styles.
Yeah.
Benetton polo shirt and Pringle jumper. Ah, the polo shirt. Worn open neck with collars up and slim link gold chains sitting atop newly grown chest hair. These were high fashion times indeed.
Yes, they were.
And let's not forget the diamond jumper, usually Pringle or Ticini, two brands who nobody ever hears about anymore. No, but I've heard of Pringle, the sour cream and onion.
Yes,
you know, like
original flavour.
Yes. Hawaiian shirts and mustaches. Thanks to Tom Selleck, Australia went wild in the 80s for bold prints and facial hair. Did he set a good example? Yeah, I'm not sure about the shirt, but those high-waist jeans never quite made a comeback. Well, not for men anyway.
We stole the look.
And we rocked it to this day. White sneakers. All you gotta do is say Back to the Future and you'll think of a Michael J. Fox in high-top sneakers, loose jeans, and a baseball jacket. And that, my friend, was 80s fashion for men. Way before the 2000s, white sneakers were the staple footwear of every man and boy worth his Coca-Cola who dreamed of driving a DeLorean, Ferrari, or Lamborghini. It was all about cars back then.
Totally. Even now.
Yeah, not much has changed.
Keeper, sovereign, and buckle rings. Rings for men were big time in the 80s, and the chunkier the better. Gold sovereign and keeper rings were good for the just going to prison for a while look. And they sat nicely alongside the snake head, square of diamonds, and buckle ring, often worn on the little finger for that ultra gangster effect.
Oh, super intimidating.
Yeah. Stonewashed denim. Stonewash was everywhere in the 80s, and if preferable for both your jeans and jacket. Double denim.
Yeah.
More was more in those days. Hems were turned up just shy of the ankle and usually by your mum. Highlights and a pierced ear. Yep. By the turn of the 80s, frosting wasn't just for cupcakes. It had made its way onto the heads of our brothers, uncles, and male celebs, and was often used to accentuate a highly layered mullet. Our favourite. Yep, in the 80s, it was a highlights a go-go. And as for the earrings, I never quite understood why boys only ever got one ear pierced. Very Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, and those frosted tips, you can forget them.
Oh.
For the women, there were also a lot of trends. Ruffles and ruches. If the hair at that time was any indication, people from the 80s loved volume. What better way to incorporate volume to your 80s look than through some fun ruffles and ruches? It automatically adds some texture to an otherwise bland silhouette. Graphic shirts. Wearing a graphic tee is one of the more casual looks of the 80s that we never grew tired of. As you can see, a simple round neck top with a graphic illustration or some text printed in bold fonts plastered in the middle is still very fashionable to this day.
Neons. 80s style was all about standing out and grabbing everyone's attention. And nothing makes you stand out more than wearing a bright as heck neon outfit. Crazy patterns and prints. You can easily spot classic 80s clothes by the crazy amount of patterns and prints on the fabric. The kookier the prints are, the more powerful the 80s vibe. Yep. And military fashion. As music and fashion are often interconnected, one of the most iconic black 80s fashion for women was Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation outfit. The world went gaga over Janet's sleek black outfit with a military-style jacket.
It was very iconic.
Yep.
Lace. Another fashion trend brought about by the music scene was Madonna's use of lace in her 80s outfits. Madonna's provocative image transformed the daintiness and innocence usually associated with material to something daring and sexy.
So true.
Power suits. As women became more empowered to take on the corporate world during the 80s, power suits also became popular amongst working women. Icons like Princess Diana and Brooke Shields took a liking for this trend.
Princess Diana rocked a power suit.
Rest in peace, she was a goddess.
Yes, she was.
Sequins, studs, and bedazzles. If colours aren't enough to grab attention, sequins, studs, and bedazzles will surely do the trick. Adding them to any outfit was one of the 80s quick fixes to sparkle up any party. Exhibit A. Denim jackets. Nothing made you look more chill and down to earth in the 80s than an oversized denim jacket. Okay, maybe mine's not oversized, but this item has become such a fashion staple that you probably have one lying around somewhere in your closet right now.
100%.
So I got this.
High-waisted jeans. When Guess launched their hugely successful marketing campaign during the 80s, every woman wanted a pair of these infamous high-waisted denim jeans. These jeans were often paired with classic leather belts and loose tops for a casual, chic look. Aerobic gear. Upon the invention of lycra, tights and leotards became the standard clothes for aerobic classes for those active 80s women. Aerobic gear was such a big trend that it found its way back in the present in what we more commonly know now as athleisure or athleisure wear. Scrunchies. The 80s was obsessed with all things hair. hair gel, hair products, hairspray, and hair accessories. Scrunchies came in all shapes and sizes. Exhibit B. They were cute enough to wear on your wrist and functional enough to tie up all that crazy hair during summer.
Totally makes sense now why they have the musical called Hair.
Yeah,
Just obsessed.
makes sense.
Leather. From Joan Jett's glam rock black leather pants to Michael Jackson's iconic red thriller jacket, leather clothing was the zeitgeist of the 80s. You could easily turn a simple look to glam by incorporating some leather in your outfit. That's why you brought your leather jacket today.
100%.
Shoulder pads. You cannot reference 80s fashion without mentioning shoulder pads. As wide, broad shoulders became an image of strength and power, women had shoulder pads sewn onto their party dresses to stand out as much as possible.
Wow.
Even at parties, they want to be broad.
Yeah.
This fashion trend had its resurgence in the late 2000s and early 2010s when the fashion house Balmain created stunning runway looks using shoulder pads.
They are still iconic for their shoulder padded looks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What were us Aussies looking like in the 1990s?
Overall, the 1990s saw the return of minimalist fashion of the 1950s and the 1970s, opposed to the flashier trends of the 1980s. Fashion trends throughout the decade also recycled styles from the previous decades, mainly the 1950s, 60s, and the 1970s. The early 1990s saw a continuation of late 1980s fashion as women wore denim shirts, leggings, coloured tights, bike shorts, and tartan skirts. Popular accessories included cowboy boots, headscarves, leggings, and penny loafers. What even are penny loafers?
Guess we'll find out today.
Yes. Leotards were often worn as tops with jeans, a very popular outfit. Another common outfit was to wear a skirt, baby doll, or mini dress, black opaque tights, white socks, and white sneakers.
Very fashionable.
Very cute.
Mm.
Women in the mid-1990s generally had much less of an interest in provocative or revealing clothing, with comfort and freedom being more important when it came to fashion. Both long and short skirts were favoured fairly equally, and women wore what they wanted, instead of listening to what fashion designers said was popular or in.
Screw the fashion designers.
Mm-hmm. In 1995, the film Clueless inspired a comeback of women's preppy clothing from the mid-1960s. The lead character, Cher Horowitz, had a huge influence on women's fashion, and she's considered a fashion icon of the 1990s.
Wow,
She totally is. The film popularised knee-high socks, blazers and skirts in matching plaid patterns, mod-inspired colours and prints, collared shirts, tan-coloured and white tights, and also micro skirts.
Wow. We had the mini skirt and we had the micro skirt.
I know.
In the late 1990s, many early and mid-1990s fashion trends continued late into the decade. This included high-waisted miniskirts, oversized t-shirts, kind of like what I'm going now, yoga pants, turtleneck sweaters, tube tops, floral maxi skirts, tartan skirts, cardigans, and denim shirts. In general, women's fashion in the late 1990s became more body conscious and athletic in 1997. Some of the newer trends that popped up include tight shirts, flared pants, platform shoes, thong underwear, popular among women between 18 and 25, and lower-waisted jeans inspired by the designs of Alexander McQueen. Here are some of the looks that absolutely defined the decade. Wrap waist belts. While they may have lacked functionality, being seen with one of these could skyrocket you up the social chain. Typically sold at Supre, God love good Supre.
Yeah.
Gotta love Supre shop. These belts look best when tied over a white t-shirt with a frilled mini skirt and sequin sandals.
That was the look.
It really was. Von Dutch trucker hats. Practically an institution, Von Dutch was a go-to trucker hat brand for any 90s, 2000s teen looking for sun protection. Made famous by the likes of Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie, owning your own Von Dutch was a privilege not all of us received. I know I didn't receive it.
Neither did I. Tracksuit sets. There's nothing that says 2001 more than the iconic velour tracksuit. Whether you first bore witness to the trend on Paris Hilton's The Simple Life or Jennifer Lopez's I'm Real music video, the pink Juicy Couture tracksuit was on every teenager's wish list. And if you managed to score yourself one, it was a no deal unless the word juicy was embellished on your tush.
My goodness. What a time. Hair bubbles. Well, some were obsessed over butterfly clips, Others found the appeal of the hair bubble more enticing. While almost impossible to tie, believe me, I have many experiences, their position at the top of matching pigtails was sure to elevate any look. But when it came to sibling rivalry, a flick with one of these was enough to have you calling out, "Mom!" in tears.
Cargo pants. Made famous by skater boy singer Avril Lavigne, the humble cargo pant was the epitome of tomboy chic. With its endless pockets and loose-fitting form, this piece was best styled with a white singlet top and a loose tie. So cool.
Baby pink skinny jeans. Any wardrobe from the early 2000s would have this one staple in common. Whether you're headed out for a family dinner or hanging out the shops with your friends, there was nothing quite like rocking your favorite pair of JJ's baby pink skinny jeans.
JJ's.
Throwback. Went last week.
Cropped denim vests. Worn over a dress or matching denim and paired with a long, thin scarf, the denim vest worked wonders in transforming a boho look into an edgy rock star ensemble. Finishing the look with your favorite pair of round glasses with tinted lenses, and you were ready to go.
Ready to go, just instant.
Yeah.
Louis Vuitton's rainbow monogram. These accessories made famous by almost every Hollywood it girl of the early 2000s, the Louis Vuitton multicolored monogram was a print that everyone wanted to get their hands on. Whether you're after the barrel bag or the money purse, the print was worn by many for years, even if they were fakes.
I feel like that's also come back in style.
Yeah, what, the fakes or the monogram?
Both. Butterfly clips. The key to mastering the butterfly clip trend was to fill your hair with as many of these multicolored pieces as possible. A quintessential part of the late 90s and early 2000s, the butterfly clip became a staple to style up any hairstyle. However, the magic was lost as soon as they were swapped out for bobby pins.
Oh, how I miss it. Dunlop volley trainers. No school PE lesson from the early 2000s will be complete without the Dunlop volley trainers. While your parents and teachers constantly pointed out their less than supportive features, all that mattered was that it was the colour that you decided on, and if anyone else at school chose the same pair. It's very competitive to get those red ones, you know? Like
Ed Hardy tops. From its rhinestones to its rose-centric illustrations, even it couple Chrissy Teigen and John Legend couldn't resist the allure of an Ed Hardy garment. From the teenagers of the early 2000s, there was something about an Ed Hardy singlet top that screamed cool.
Oh God, cool. Very many definitions over the years.
Yes.
Roxy or Billabong swimwear. While swimwear brands look to be popping up all over our social media, owning either a Roxy or Billabong bikini will lift you from forgettable to surfer chick. Spending every Saturday in surf, dive, ski just doesn't have the same allure as it once did.
A striped fedora. A big thank you to Justin Timberlake for pioneering the iconic hat. Throughout countless red carpet appearances and music videos, JT really taught us how to bring sexy back.
And then put it back in the closet, because that was not
And
working.
leave it there.
Best friend necklaces. When it came to make or break friendships in the early 2000s, there was mainly one rule of thumb. A best friend duo didn't exist unless you owned one of these necklaces. That's why,
Absolutely.
gosh, I can't believe you're not wearing the one I gave you.
Sorry.
However, those same friendships were always tested when deciding who would get the best and who would be stuck with the friends. Always. Sassy meets slightly inappropriate slogan t-shirts. Every teenager under 18 who had access to JJ's or a Super A store were bound to proudly own one of these. Boy-obsessed, neon-printed, and worn almost every weekend, these somewhat inappropriate t-shirts were a must-have. How teenagers were able to convince their parents to buy them a "My daddy is my ATM" t-shirt is a question for another day and another video.
Yeah. Tie-dye t-shirts. Tie-dye is certainly having a comeback in 2020, with the 90s print resurfacing across both streetwear and loungewear. The psychedelic pattern signifies all things 90s. Childhood DIY projects, vintage 70s pieces from the local thrift store, bean bags and lava lamps.
Oh, classic. I loved lava lamps.
Oh, me too.
Oh. Bandeau top. Back and better than ever, the bandeau top has made its way back onto the fashion scene, pairing perfectly with a power suit or a pair of tracksuit pants. However, in the 2000s, bandeau tops were ideal for layering under totally impractical singlets. Did I say that correctly? Bandeau? Was it bandeau? No, it doesn't matter.
Denim overalls. Matched with a skateboard and a cap worn backwards, the denim overall was a staple for any cool kid of the 90s. And if you're super cool, you'd leave only one strap just hanging open for a carefree look.
Oh, so cool. So cool. Paul Frank themed anything. The familiar monkey named Paul Frank was a quintessential part of any Australian childhood. Whether you owned the adorable face on a hoodie, a t-shirt, or even a pencil case, the cool factor certainly went up when sporting anything Paul Frank.
Okay, Country Road barrel bag.
Oh, got one of them now.
Yeah. From school camps to sleepovers, every Australian girl owned at least one of Country Road's barrel bags. The perfect size for an overnight bag, parties and sporting events were bound to feature the bag in almost every colour imaginable, but always baby pink and black.
Oh, always.
Mine was black.
Go-to, yeah. Aviator sunglasses, the ultimate it girl accessory. A pair of aviator sunglasses elevated any teenager's cool factor. Extra points if yours had a patterned frame. The Aussies in the 1990s were an unfashionable bunch to say the least, so I'm glad we moved on. And now, to the 2000s. Many clothing trends in the 2000s were born out of globalization, the rise of fast fashion, and celebrities' growing influence as style icons. The 2000s were also home to trends that hit big and burnt out fast. At this time, American TV stars were as influential as their movie counterparts, and fashion was adopted in Australia from what we saw Americans wearing.
Technology and Y2K had a huge impact on fashion in the early 2000s. The colour palette was filled with shiny black tones and reflective metallics. While some Y2K trends were worn daily, many of these looks were reserved for going out. Popular outfits for women included mesh or handkerchief tops, box pleated or leather skirts, shiny pants, and sparkly shoes. For men, Y2K looks usually involve leather jackets, a statement dress shirt, and chunky shoes. If you need an idea of what that looked like, Britney Spears and NSYNC were trendsetters for this type of style.
Casual clothing and leisure wear were the other big trends of the early 2000s. Denim became a staple for men and women, going beyond jeans to shirts, jackets, and hats. If you're putting together a casual style as a woman, you'd think crop tops, hoodies, low-rise flared jeans, cargo pants, Daisy Dukes, jean skirts, off-the-shoulder tops, ribbed sweaters with platform sandals, Ugg boots or sneakers. Common looks for men included distressed denim, cargo pants, tracksuits, rugby or polo shirts, flip-flops, Oxford shoes, and sneakers.
As the decade went on, 2000s fashion began to take cues from 1960s bohemian looks. Yoga pants, low-rise jeans, cow-neck shirts, peasant tops, capri pants, crop jackets, and dresses over jeans were popular outfit choices for women. These were often paired with accessories like chunky belts, aviator glasses, jelly bracelets, ties worn around the neck or as belts, ballet flats, and platform boots.
So many options.
I know. So many different styles mushed together.
Literally. The 1960s revival looks were also popular with men. Outfit options included light-wash bootcut jeans, cargo shorts, classic rock t-shirts, fitted cowboy shirts, Henleys, polos with pop collars, and seersucker suits. The middle of the decade was also defined by the latest it items, like Von Dutch trucker hats, Juicy Couture, tracksuits, and Louis Vuitton bags.
Many styles from the early and mid-2000s carried over to the latter part of the decade, with a few exemptions. For women, crop tops were replaced with camisoles, and miniskirts gave way to baby doll, bubble skirt, and sweater dresses. There was also a 1980s and 1990s revival that reintroduced neon colours, animal prints, geometric shapes, light denim jeggings, and ripped acid wash jeans that were worn with gladiator sandals, belly flats, and headbands. An oversized look started to gain popularity, but it was more subtle than the traditional 80s fit.
Men's late 2000s fashion was a mix of 1950s and 1980s throwbacks, with Letterman and black leather jackets, overcoats, slim-cut jeans, Ed Hardy t-shirts, flannel shirts, and V-neck sweaters. These were often paired with dad hats, wayfarers or aviators, motorcycle boots, Converse, Vans, or sneakers. The men's power suit was also updated from the 80s to have a more slim-tailored cut.
Thank God.
There were some particular looks that defined how we looked in the 2000s. Here were some of the bigger trends.
Hip-hop. Here we go. Many rappers influenced fashion with their own clothing lines in the 2000s, including Jay-Z, Diddy, Nelly, and 50 Cent. Many looks included baggy jeans, tall t-shirts, sports jerseys, velour suits, bubble jackets, and puffer vests paired with headbands, sweatbands, Timberland boots, and sneakers like Adidas Superstars or Nike Air Force Ones. They're still in.
Yeah.
Sports, especially basketball jerseys, were everywhere, and you would find people in Melbourne wearing Kobe Bryant jerseys.
Recipes. Malibu's most wanted streetwear is often brand-focused casual clothing, like jeans, tees, and sneakers. In the late 2000s, popular streetwear styles included distressed skinny jeans, loose-fitting tops, loose or fitted tracksuits, truck pants, hoodies, graphic t-shirts, vintage thrift shop tees, and Tommy Hilfiger and US Polo Aston brands. Sneakers were an important part of the look, especially retro Nike Air Jordans and Adidas Yeezys. Shoulder pads were a popular accessory for men.
Emo. Emo fashion trickled into the mainstream in the mid-2000s and took cues from goth and punk styles. Outfits were often all or mostly black with skinny jeans, band t-shirts, studded belts, and checkered bands. No emo outfit was complete without the right hairstyle. Most common were the choppy cuts with long side swept bangs, dyed black, platinum blonde, or a bright colour.
Thank God we moved past that.
I'm not sure if Avril Lavigne did though.
Oh, love her though. Athleisure wear. If you wanted to be comfortable yet fashionable in the early 2000s, all you had to do was throw on your favourite tracksuit. Everyone from Britney Spears to Beyonce and Eminem to Diddy were in on the tracksuit craze. They were often brightly coloured and emblazoned with rhinestone logos and phrases. It was also popular to mix truck pants with dress clothing and designer shoes to elevate the look. Finally, onto our final decade, the 2010s. Look how far we've come!
We've seen the bad, the good, all of the trends throughout history.
A total whirlwind, and in the end, we're just wearing what we wore in the 60s.
Pretty much. So another decade of fashion is in the books. However, unlike most decades of fashion steered by music, film, and celebrity, the 2010s leave behind a legacy that was influenced by social media, new gender codes, and consumer unwillingness to sacrifice comfort.
Wow, big decade.
Huge.
Our first big trend was millennial pink. Name another decade defined by a colour, and a youthful shade of pink at that. Millennial pink seeped into homes, closets, businesses, grids, and even advertisements in the 2010s, like a mist of optimism, equality, and empowerment. And in the process, the colour gifted us with iconic fashion moments, like the John Batista Valley pink tulle gown Rihanna wore to the 2015 Grammys, and the pink Edward Saxon suit worn by Harry Styles on the Today Show 2 years later.
I remember that.
Yeah, iconic. The Vogue orchestrated Met Gala even swapped out its famous red carpet for a pink one at the 2019 event.
Love that. Long sleeve wedding dresses, along with searches for Pippa Middleton, the traditional nuptials of Prince William and Kate Middleton in 2011 sparked a trend for long sleeve wedding dresses. Kate's lace gown inspired a rush of knockoffs that carried on for several seasons as brides-to-be began to embrace modest silhouettes over the strapless styles that dominated the bridal industry during the 2000s. Likewise, the dress worn by Meghan Markle for her 2018 wedding to Prince Harry sparked demand for wedding dresses with three-quarter sleeves and bateau necklines.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember that wedding. So beautiful.
Stunning.
Wedge sneakers. In hindsight, the sneaker wedge, a polarizing concept, may have been the precursor to athleisure takeover. The heeled sneakers, which were usually done up with tonal suede uppers or high-shine metal hardware, became a favourite off-duty style of cool girls at the time. Cool girls such as Gisele Bündchen and Paris Hilton. Pure-player sneaker brands like Nike and Puma soon followed with their own iterations of the contradictory style before the trend fizzled out.
Skinny jeans. Without a doubt, the denim industry's hero for the decade was the skinny jean. While women latched onto the style for its curve-hugging attributes and versatility, advancements in stretch fabrications made the traditionally rigid fabric soft, flexible, and comfortable for the first time. And despite best efforts by other bottoms like yoga pants and mum jeans, the style remained number one throughout the decade. Internationally, they were very popular, and in 2018, NPD Group reported that sales for skinny jeans accounted for nearly 40% of women's jean sales.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Normcore. Proof that it's never too late to reinvent yourself. The 2010s fanny packs became cool, merch shirts became a hot commodity, and dad sneakers became a status symbol. Normcore and its Gen Z counterpart Dadcore filtered into men's fashion in the early 2010s as a cultural response to the Great Recession. Millennials' budgets were tight, therefore evergreen items like white Stan Smith sneakers and Birkenstock Arizona sandals offered longevity and comfort while they waded through the storm. While it was dubbed an anti-fashion move by consumers, brands fully embraced the back-to-basics approach to dressing, resulting in a style that mimicked 90s dad fashion made famous by Jerry Seinfeld and Steve Jobs. For instance, ill-fitted jeans, chunky white sneakers, and sweaters or sweatshirts.
My Birkenstocks are actually my gardening shoes now.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Wow, versatile.
Loafers. Gucci put the loafer back on the map thanks to the 2015 introduction of its kangaroo fur-lined Princeton loafer slipper. While the shoe was initially criticised for its use of real fur and mocked for its impractical design, consumers warmed up to the idea of the sophisticated horse-bit loafer. The traditional silhouette snowballed into a multi-season it item for women and men, updated with colourful leather, brocade, velvets and embroidery.
Kangaroo.
Yeah.
Talk about Aussie.
Wow.
Leggings. The legging was great. The high stretch, pocketless bottom intended for fitness activities and nearly took out the denim industry in the 2010s when the figure-hugging pant became acceptable attire for nearly all occasions. Brands like Lululemon built their empires on the garment, but a slew of fashion players soon got into the leggings game, blurring the lines between performance and fashion.
That is so true. I'm actually wearing Lululemon tights right now.
Ooh, a bit of a brand deal.
Customization. Brands played into millennials' innate desire to be unique through personalised products. While Nike pioneered the concept with the launch of Nike ID in 1999, customization took off in the 2010s as retailers and brands sought for creative ways to entice consumers back into stores. Brands like Levi's, Converse, and Madewell introduced personalisation opportunities to their sales floors, while others like 3x1, Weekday, and Indochino took customisation a step further with one-of-a-kind garments.
Do you have anything personalised?
I have one bag that has my initials.
Nice. Yeah, that counts as personalisation.
It makes me feel cool.
The naked dress. During a decade that rewarded those who broke the internet with skin-bearing photos and brought conversations about body positivity to the forefront, celebrities like Jennifer Lopez, Beyonce, and Kim Kardashian turned heads on the red carpet in sheer flesh-tone frocks. The naked dress trend thrived and died on the red carpet, but the more commercial and wearable iterations of the trend took shape in women's wear.
Do you have anything sheer?
No.
Novelty handbags. Instagram was a breeding ground for accessory trends, but none more so than for handbags. Small novelty bags with untraditional shapes and constructions stepped into the limelight during the 2010s, giving up-and-coming brands like Cult Gaia, Mansour Gabriel, and Stodd the opportunity to churn out signature items. Influencers took to these bags like moths to a flame, accentuating their monochromatic looks with miniature beaded handbags, transparent PVC totes, basket-like bags, and colourful circle bags.
Very nice.
I have one of those.
Oh, really? Floppy hats. If you wanted to identify a blogger/influencer from in a large crowd in 2014, it would have only necessitated finding the wide brim felt hat. Floppy hats became the de facto accessory of hipster fashion, bloggers, influencers, and young Hollywood starlets, serving as a bohemian punctuation mark for outfits that typically consisted of ankle boots, cut-off shorts, and fringed shoulder bags. The trend evolved into straw hats, sometimes with wanderlust sayings like beach vibes only, as the fashion bloggers became lifestyle and travel influencers.
I do feel like back then it would just automatically elevate any look.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Mum jeans. As 90s nostalgia kicked in and Gen Z began to look back at the decade-style icons like Princess Diana, Cindy Crawford, and Winona Ryder, there was one jean style that caught their attention and dollars: the mum jean. By 2016, the high-waisted, relaxed fit jean, linked to practical suburbia style, became a favoured style among women and the counterpart to the dadcore look that swept over young men's fashion.
Guccification. While women aimed to project a confident and powerful image through suiting, men took a turn towards camp and costume nearing the end of the decade. The Guccification of fashion touched all segments of the industry, from loafers and embroidered handbags to logo tees and home textiles. But the Italian brand's lavish aesthetic had the most impact on menswear. Under the guidance of Alessandro Michele, who became Gucci's creative director in 2015, the brand's tiger and snake appliques, satin bomber jackets, and embellished suiting inspired 1,000 knockoffs, which are still populating the high street stores.
True, you still see the fake Gucci's everywhere?
Still.
Yeah. Streetwear. The rise of streetwear was the culmination of several shifts in fashion in the 2010s. Normcore helped train fashionistas to accept ugly or ironic fashion. Athleisure wear had set a new standard for comfort among young consumers. The casualization of workplaces meant sneakers were the new norm, and pangs for the 80s and 90s nostalgia reverberated across men's and women's wear. Meanwhile, luxury houses searched for ways to connect with Gen Z, and the fastest way to do it was to bring in a new class of designers with street cred. Very cool.
Yeah.
Top this off with the excitement that drops and collaborations bring to any brand or retailer, and you have the birth of a category that everyone wanted a piece of in the latter half of the decade, including Louis Vuitton, Balenciaga, and Zara.
And that brings us to today's fashion, when you're joining us here. Perhaps you too can be one of the people that helps define Australia's look over the coming decade.
We hope you enjoyed our brief history of the looks that define this country. And hey, if you get the chance, you might even be able to visit a vintage store here and rock some of the looks.
Yeah, great idea for a weekend.
Yep.
Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.
Ciao.